Hi, everyone. I hope you guys are having a great semester so far. Hopefully, you guys have all got a hold of your text by now. If not, I recommend subscribing to the e-text through the Pearson website. So that's going to be the publisher website. There is a link where you can subscribe in the announcement section of the last two announcements, as well as in your syllabus. There's two options. I believe you can do 4 months for $39.99, or you can do pay like a month at a time for $9.99 a month. So that's going to give you immediate access to the text so that you can get a jump on the reading. If you have ordered a physical text and you don't have it yet, you still have until the end of next week before you have anything due related to the text. So this class is asynchronous. It's not fully asynchronous in that we do have due dates every couple of weeks. There's usually something due at the end of each week. So you're always going to want to be checking in on the announcements as well as with your syllabus to make sure that you're turning in all of your work. However, there's no set lecture time where you have to log in to hear me chat. Once we have our writing assignments, like once we get the first one, I will likely post a live Blackboard Collaborate session where you'll have the option to log in and ask any questions that you need to. But that will also be posted as a recording if you're not able to log into that. So that being said, your schedule is pretty open for the week. You do need to spend probably about 6 hours a week working on stuff for this class. So that's going to include reading, writing, doing our discussion boards, taking our quizzes, studying for the quizzes, all of that. And it'll pick up as the semester goes on. But you can do that really at any time during the week. Most of our due dates are going to be on Fridays, and you're going to need to turn in everything by midnight on that night. There are no makeups for discussions because that takes the place of the work that we would be doing in class. And because you have between 1.5 to 2 weeks to do those discussions, and they're pretty easy. So do those on time. If you need a makeup for something like a quiz, a writing assignment, anything else in this class, just contact me, and it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, but I am pretty flexible. The reason that we have these due dates throughout the semester is just to keep you on track so you're not waiting until the end of the semester to turn everything in. So I'm just going to jump in and start going over some of the terminology that's going to be popping up in your first chapters in your text. I'll be posting another update next week so that we can go over some more of that. But the biggest thing diving into these first chapters of our text is going to be terminology that's going to help you develop visual literacy. So visual literacy is going to be the ability to describe what it is that you're seeing, to understand what it is that you're seeing. So going in a museum or a gallery, or even just like being anywhere with art, your parents' house, your dad's office, walking around USC upstate, there's always going to be things on the wall. There's going to be sculptures in outdoor spaces. Even architecture really does have a sense of design with it. Somebody had intentions when putting together the plans for a building. So being able to look at those different forms of human expression and think about what the artist was thinking when they were putting that together, but then also what kind of message it's giving off. What are other people getting from it? Is it positive? Is it negative? So thinking about that. Something might surprise you about art is that the average time that a person spends looking at art when they go into a museum is about 2 seconds. So if you think about it, you walk into a gallery and there's all this stuff on the wall. You're walking by and you're just kind of like, I see it, I see it, I see it, I see it. And then there might be like one special piece that you want to take a little bit longer looking at. But typically people spend 2 to 4 seconds looking at a work of art. So when you're trying to develop active seeing, which is one of the buzzwords in chapter 1, and sort of utilize that visual literacy, you're going to want to take a longer time to look at the work of art. So to actively see, you're looking at not only what's being visually presented to you, but also what it might mean. There is this whole movement in the art world called slow art. So there's a slow art day every year, and a lot of different museums and galleries celebrate it. The purpose of Slow Art Day is to build a relationship with the works of art that you're looking at. And so usually each site has a goal, and it's like, come to the museum for Slow Art Day and spend 10 minutes looking at 4 pieces of art. So that's 10 minutes each for those 4 pieces. So 40 minutes total. And then people, go to lunch and they discuss what it is that they were able to get from those pieces with their extended viewing. So I think it's really beautiful. And it's something that we're going to be practicing as we develop our visual literacy and as we attempt to be people who are utilizing active seeing when we are looking at art. Um, so one of the first things that you're going to notice when you look at a work of art is what the subject matter is. So one of the things I want to help you sort of differentiate between is subject matter versus content. Really those terms seem very interchangeable, and they are, but for the sake of this class, we're going to talk about subject matter as being what is being visually presented to you. And we're going to discuss the content as being a deeper meaning behind that subject matter. So much imagery is symbolic. If you think about a tree with apples on it and you see a snake, it's the tree of life. It's the story of the Garden of Eden. So there's so much loaded imagery that we see every day that we honestly don't even think about. So I have a couple small paintings from my personal collection just sitting here, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about what their subject matter and content might be, just to help us get warmed up with this. This is something that you can discuss with any form of art. So this semester we'll be talking about painting, drawing, printmaking, photography, sculpture, site-specific artworks, performance-based artworks. But sometimes, just for the sake of portability, paintings can be the easiest to dive into first. So I have this great little painting here. It's by a local artist. Her name is Claire Luca. And we have a couple that is dancing, and there's a flying piano behind them. So looking at this and just trying to identify our basic subject matter, we would say the subject matter of this painting is a couple that is dancing. The woman's wearing a yellow dress. The masculine figure is wearing a blue suit. The laws of gravity don't appear to apply to them because we're not really having a figure ground relationship here. Everything is kind of floating. And then everything in the background really feels like a whirlwind. We're seeing colors. We do see those piano keys, so we're able to identify that. But I wouldn't call this a realistic piece. And that's something that we're going to talk about as well. Something can be representational to where we can understand what is being presented to us without being realistic. So I would say this piece is representational, but it is abstracted. And I would say that's because of the expressive way that the figures have been depicted. It's nowhere close to looking like a photograph, but we can definitely tell that it's a couple and that they're dancing. So that's the subject matter. Diving into the content, we think about the mood that's being evoked here. So it does appear to be joyful. I'm really not getting melancholy from this at all. Getting that air of like a whirlwind, a wonderful evening between the two of these people, an experience. It might even be nostalgic. You could think about if this couple is now older, and they're looking back on this wondrous night spent together, or maybe they were separated and this is just something that they can remember one another by. Love could be a simpler way of describing the content. Love and excitement. But so we'd say the subject is the man and the woman dancing, and then the content matter would be those emotions of sort of love and excitement that are conjured by the scene. And content is going to be different depending on who is looking at the piece. So an artist's intended content might be different than what the viewer takes away from a piece. So that's good to remember, is that um, once an artist has put their work into the world, they can't control what other people take from it. So that's something to think about. Here is another sweet little painting. This is by a North Carolina based artist. Her name is Katie Morrill, but she actually lived in New England for a long time. So a lot of her paintings are based on scenes from her childhood. So I believe this painting is based on a scene in a New Hampshire forest from where she's from. And she remembers, walking out there with her dad. That, if you don't know that story, you wouldn't really be able to take that away from it. But the subject matter that we're seeing is a wooded scene. There does appear to be water on the ground, although, that blue could also just be shadow because we do have a lot of blue in the scene. It's definitely winter. We're not seeing leaves on the trees, and it does seem like we're seeing some snow or some moonlight on the ground. So the subject is a winter wooded scene. Thinking about the meaning or the message that we're getting from this piece, I would say a message of calm, of peace, of solitude. So those would all be things that I'm getting from this piece. And again, while it's representational, it's not realistic. Maybe from far away, but up close, we really do see each of those brush strokes that's used to make up the piece. We're also getting some texture happening there. We'll talk more about those things later. But all things to think about there. Going more into talking about realism versus photorealism versus just representation, and then versus abstraction. I have a few examples that I want to show you guys here. So before I show you these examples, we kind of divide artwork into two categories, and then there's subcategories of that regarding realism and abstraction. So there's things that are representational. That means that I can see what it is. In the one painting, I could tell that it was a couple, they were dancing. In the other painting, I could tell that it's a forest. There's other paintings that are abstract. There is gray area where things can be representational, but they are abstracted. So the more we pull something away from being realistic, the more abstracted it is. So if you think about cartoons are a great example. We are seeing figures that might be people or animals, but they are removed from realism. They are abstracted versions of things that we know in the world. So I'm going to start out with a photorealistic painting. I'm going to show you. It's actually a drawing. Let me get you on the screen share. One moment. Okay, so this is a painting or a drawing by artist Via Selmans. She is known for her realistic works. These are painstaking. So this is an image of waves. And it's a lithograph. So this is a print that was created using a metal plate. But so she created a drawing on the plate, and then using the plate, she's able to make multiple images through the process of printmaking. So this is an image that I would categorize as photorealistic because it so closely resembles a black and white photograph. Here's another piece by Via Selmans. This piece is also a print. It's made via a woodcut, but she also has paintings that she has made depicting the night sky. She uses very tiny little brushes to do these white stars. And then in the case of the woodcut, she's cutting out each one of those stars. It's kind of interesting because even though these are photorealistic, especially with the night sky, you could also just say it's dots. So it goes back and forth between being photorealistic and just wildly abstract. But she is one of the most well-known photorealistic artists working in the last century. So then I'm going to move into an artist that you guys probably know really well, Vincent van Gogh. The Impressionists are all, pretty well known just because their style is very exciting with this rapid mark making. However, when we think of Impressionists, sometimes we might tend to think of these paintings as being realistic, but they're not realistic. They are as much based on the paint that is used as they are the subject matter. If you look at these sunflowers, that in no way resembles a photograph. We can identify that it's a sunflower, so it is representational, but it's abstracted by the expressive style that is used to create it. You can see here, we're not even getting any shadows on the vase or on the surface that it's sitting on. Another really well-known Impressionist artist, Claude Monet. You guys are probably familiar with the water lilies. From far away, it gives you the impression, hence the name Impressionism, of water lilies. So you may be tempted to think that it's realistic, but when you get up close, it's really just brushes of paint. You can see those brush strokes of paint, and it's very abstracted. So while it's not full abstract, it is abstracted representation. So moving forward a little bit, here is a really well-known artist that's practicing now, Nicole Eisenman. This is her painting Seder. So she makes a lot of paintings related to the Jewish culture. And you can see that we can tell there's multiple figures that are sitting at this table. We have two hands that are breaking matzah right at the front in the center. However, those are not realistic hands. These are not realistic faces, definitely abstracted. So it's abstracted representation that we're getting here from Nicole Eisenman. I want to show you one example of non-objective abstraction. So when we think of abstraction, just like representation, there's different degrees of it. Whereas photorealism is going to be the height of, realistic representation. Non-objective abstraction is going to be sort of the height of abstraction. Non-objective means we can't name what we are seeing in the image. So these paintings by artist Mark Rothko are non-objective. He's often thought of as a color field painter because he uses or used color in a way that really evokes mood and emotions, but he never painted, a picture of a person or a picture of a dog. It's really about the paint, about the color, and about sort of being surrounded in that field of color. So something that is completely abstract like this, where we can't name a subject other than color, other than paint, we refer to this work as non-objective abstraction. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys, sort of diving into identifying subject matter versus content, and then also sort of trying to dive into that gamut of discussing representation and abstraction and everything that lies in between. For our first discussion forum, which is open now, you'll be selecting a work of art that you find either in person and take a picture and post it, or that you find online. And I'll want you to introduce it and discuss the subject matter and the content. And if you want, you can identify, is it realistic? Is it abstract? And so we can help each other start to be able to develop that visual literacy. And as we're talking about all of this stuff, we are talking about aesthetics. So that's a word that we're going to discuss a lot. It's a word that comes up in chapter 1. And aesthetics is really just the whole spectrum of what things look like. In the definition, it discusses how aesthetics is our notion of what is beautiful. Everyone has sort of a different aesthetic, though. So when you hear people talking about like redecorating their house, they might look at something in a magazine and say, that's not really my aesthetic. That's because it's not in the realm of what they consider beautiful. So sort of thinking about interior design, a Palm Springs aesthetic is going to be different from, a Southwestern aesthetic or an Outer Banks beach house aesthetic. It's sort of the style of a thing. The aesthetics of different paintings or any different work of art are all going to be different. But, people like the Impressionists, Claude Monet, Vincent van Gogh, and everyone else working in their group, they have a similar group of aesthetics, and that's why we sort of group it together and give it a name. So we'll talk more about that next week, but hopefully this was a good little taster, starting to develop our visual vocabulary and starting to think about the way that we can discuss art with one another in a more thoughtful way, other than just being like, I like it or I don't like it. And if you're ever tempted to say something like that, think about why you don't like it or why you like it. What's your supporting argument for that? So I think it's always good practice to discuss what you're seeing before you discuss how you feel about what you're seeing, to just give each other intelligent dialogue. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. I look forward to interacting with you in the discussion forum this week. And please email me if you have any questions. Thanks.